Hey everybody, welcome back to Graymalkin Lane, the podcast where queer friends and allies gather to discuss and review the original X-Men comics from the 1960s. Last week we looked at X-Men number 15 called Prisoners of the Mysterious Master Mold, where the original X-Men ended up captured by the Sentinels, leaving only Professor X free outside. Master Mold, who's the giant sentient machine mothership Sentinel that makes the Sentinels, has threatened to destroy an entire city unless Bolivar Trask, the creator of the Sentinels, is going to teach Master Mold how to make new Sentinels, because apparently that wasn't part of his programming. We're going to assume Master Mold uses they, them pronouns for the purpose of this podcast. So today we'll be reviewing X-Men number 16, which is called The Supreme Sacrifice. I just showed my sons the cover for fun, and my 10-year-old goes, "Who sacrifices themselves?" I'm like, you have to read the issue to find out, buddy. This comic book was produced in January 1966, so we are in a brand new year of the X-Men, still in the late 60s. We are going to invite each of our guests to introduce themselves, let us know your gender pronouns, and tell us about a time, your question for today. Tell us about a time when you came close to death. You can interpret that question however you like. Go ahead.
My name is Heather, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I don't have a very exciting answer for this because I have lived a very safe life. But I mean, I can be really dramatic and be like, well, this happened, like some very small inconvenience, and I almost died. But for real, the closest I can think of, other than like an inner tube overturning when I was like 10, but I was wearing a life jacket, so I was safe the whole time. I just didn't feel like it. But about 6 or 7 years ago, I started hanging out with this guy, and he had a Jeep, which was part of the reason I started hanging out with him. It's fine. And he took off like the top and the doors and everything for summer, and we would go off-roading. And there was one time we started going, I don't even know where the hell we were. We started going on this ledge, and we almost just rolled over the side. Like, I remember he stopped because we were very close to tipping over, and we all just had to be like as still as possible so we did not roll down this dirt hill in a Jeep with no doors or roof on it. I mean, we were all wearing our seatbelts, but that can only get you so far when the car doesn't have anything to protect you. So that's the closest I can think of, which wasn't even really all that close to death if we're being real. But like I said, very safe life. I'm not a big risk taker, so.
No brushes with death in the roller derby?
I mean, I've dislocated a rib, but that's about as bad as it's gotten, but that's not close to death. That's just...
I'm glad you have not brushed death. That's a good thing.
I'm Noelle, she, her, and I think the closest, it's another vehicle-related one to death, and nothing actually happened, but I'd driven up to the mountains for the day and taking pictures. Usually when I'm driving in the mountains, in Colorado, I would try to come home before dark, but I stayed for sunset pictures. Then I'm driving home, and evening is deer time, and I'm on this little 2-lane road, and getting really dark by now, and I just see a giant, I guess it was a buck because it had the huge antlers, leaping towards the road, towards my car, and it was terrifying. If I had gone a little faster, if he jumped a little sooner, that would have been really bad. I was driving a small Neon at the time, so I was not going to win that fight. So that's the closest I can think I've come.
Scary.
Is it my turn?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So name's Bradley, they, them. My instinct when you told us the question is that like anytime you're in a car, you're maybe at like one unfortunate decision away from it. I've had like a few dicey car situations. Probably the closest is I was at the beach with my sister when I was younger, and we were just like, we were kind of at that age where it's now like safe to be sort of unsupervised, but like we were still like definitely teenager, like early teenagers, like late, like I was probably like 9, she was probably like 13. But we were like just kind of roughhousing in the water, and we just got like, it just kind of got out of hand. We just got out too far, and I was pretty sure I was gonna die. But I don't know if that like I don't know if I actually was, but I was in my head. But like we were definitely like, I was able to like pull her back a little bit, and then I would be too weak to like go any further, and she would like pull me back toward shore a little bit. We got like back to shore and just passed out for like a while. But yeah, that's the one that springs to mind as far as when I felt like I was like, oh, I almost just died. I don't I don't know if I was just dramatic or if it was that bad, but it did feel that bad.
Sure. My name is Chad, he, him, his, and I feel like I have a couple of stories, but the one I'll tell today, when I was 20 years old, in a former life, I was a closeted Mormon missionary, you know, those like guys with the little tags that knock on your doors. And I was in Philadelphia, and my companion and I, the guy I was paired with, got surrounded by this group of guys who were mugging us, and they told me to empty my like pockets, and I literally had nothing but a bus pass, and I was just like, guys, I don't have anything. I was like not compliant, and I ended up getting punched in the head multiple times to the point of unconsciousness. And it wasn't until like a couple of weeks later I was like, what if there had been a gun or a knife there? Like it was actually quite jarring. That's like a really sad little trauma story, huh? Now that I'm telling it, I'm like, I'm smiling, but I'm like, listen to this awful thing that happened to me. So as a therapist, I used to run different support groups, which I don't do now, but we would have group opener questions, and this is one of the questions I would ask. And I was so shocked because everyone always had a like brush with death story. Some of them really insane and some of them more minor. But this
That
issue,
was my students as well.
yeah.
I worked with junior high students that were at risk in state custody, and so we had multiple gangbangers or wannabe gangbangers and just all sorts of things. So I feel that.
Yeah. This issue has a death in it, which made this question relevant, but we're starting out in a very sober place.
Well, we are made of paper.
What was that, Heather?
I said I told you it was a morbid question.
It was a morbid question. And then Bradley, what'd you say?
Oh, I just said we are made of paper. Like we're humans are very fragile.
The fragile yet resilient creatures, we humans. Okay, so today is the third part in the Sentinels epic. So the X-Men comics have gotten a little more serious now that we've gotten a little ways in. We have multi-arc episodes. Things are a little less ridiculous and a little more poignant. There's more resonance. So last issue and the issue before, we introduced the Sentinels of Oliver Trask. We've talked about them in previous episodes, and things go a little crazy. So let's begin with our reactions to the cover. This may be the most insane cover we've had thus far. Tell me some of your thoughts.
This is sort of an overall thing for the Sentinels in general, this issue. They've got they've got sort of the shapes that you'll get used to with the Sentinels, but we're not to what you really like. It's not to the color scheme and all that stuff, and they look so insane. They look so wild.
I feel like it's an awkward angle for Master Mold. No one looks good when you take a picture from like under the chin, right? He's like back, and we've got like 5 teenagers racing for his crotch somehow. It's an awkward angle. I'm uncomfortable by the angle of all this, but it does look. I mean, he's like a big Kirby designed like god almost. His hand on a staff. He's like very Odin-like.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and also, I was just gonna say, also, I don't know if it's just the coloring from this particular printing or what, but his face isn't gold. It looks more flesh colored, and so he looks the most like an actual human than we've ever seen him.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that just adds to the looking kind of like a god, because he doesn't look as much machine in this particular picture.
And Cyclops is hugging his right knee like real tight. Like, aw. And then
That's kind
Iceman,
of cute.
Iceman, I feel like is like farting out an ice trail that's like propelling him into the air, and then he's just gonna hit him with an ice stick. He's got a little stick
Yeah,
and
it's
like
that little
What's he
ice
gonna
club
do?
that I was the most enthralled with. I love that. I love that Bobby said that's the ticket. It's my deal.
Noelle, did you have any reactions?
My favorite was Iceman, definitely. I was like, what are you going to do with that? It's clearly not
Yeah.
very much
He's
use.
gonna stick it up his nose.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's as useful as like what's Angel gonna do up there? Like he's just flying toward his head. What you gonna punch him in his huge head? Yeah.
So like a
Or
little mosquito buzzing in his ear.
flap your wings. So I think this is a good opportunity before we even begin. Can we just read Master Mold for Filth for just a moment? Like fashion, body made wrong. I mean, there's so much going on. He's like trying, excuse me. They're like trying to be Magneto with this like red and purple color scheme, but it is just not working. The headpiece, the cane accessory, someone needs to consult a fashion
The
specialist.
little booty shorts are fun. That's a fun touch.
As a robot, you should always wear booty shorts.
It's the little booty shorts and with the boot combo that like it really hits.
Like he recently became sentient, and I'm guessing he has not looked in a mirror yet. I'm gonna presume that I keep saying that they are unaware of their fashion choices. They weren't responsible for their own design, but oh my word, it's a terrible design.
I was not installed with red carpet sensibilities.
I love your robot voice, Bradley. Any fashion consultations from Heather and Noelle?
It looks like his boots might have a little bit of a platform to them,
Yeah,
which is fun.
We love to see it.
they've got a little lift.
And see, my thing is, anything you can wear with that kind of confidence, like, you do you, boo.
Yeah, we're roasting it, but the longer I look, the more I'm like, maybe it's a pride get up. That look like I've seen worse.
Also, someone needs to design them a neck.
Yeah. Yeah, does he have to
just
turn his
the
whole
angle.
body?
So as we launch into page one, we get kind of a splash page of, I feel like it's the X-Men at Master Mold's discotheque. Who do you think has the best dance moves?
Oh God.
Scott's kind of rocking it.
Warren. Warren is the only one of them who can dance. I believe that.
Angel's got
with him
like
as well.
arms up, kick back.
Yeah. Yeah, I think in general he's the only one of these people who I trust to dance. Jean is a maybe.
She's like doing the floor poses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jean is unconscious, like we are so familiar with in most of her other appearances. Okay, so I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, Iceman is mid-leap, very dramatic. Maybe he's doing ballet.
Yeah, he's like a full-on just king of I'm the king of the world, Titanic style.
Yeah.
Beast is just full on breakdancing.
As he does. So we open the issue with Professor X outside. He is not in his wheelchair. He is laying in the grass knowing his teens have been kidnapped by killer robots, basically. Now, if you are Professor X in this circumstance, you are paralyzed from the waist down, but you have one of the most brilliant minds on the planet. Telepathic, super powerful. What are your options? What can you do?
Well, there's not anyone around at the moment that he can manipulate into helping him. So
Except his X-Men and Bolivar Trask are right inside the base. They're right there.
I
so
did
are
wonder
the
why
Sentinels.
he didn't reach his brain in like it does the base have some kind of telekinesis repellent, like or telepathy repellent? I was confused.
At the end of the last issue, he sends his astral form into the base, but Master Mold senses him somehow and like disrupts him with an electric blast.
Okay,
so
sure.
maybe he's like weakened right now or something. But he did the most weird, like long range. My teenagers are about to die. So here's my plan to get them help. Who wants to cover him?
First, he does some of the best nutshelling that you've ever seen. Like, he basically in 7 panels says exactly what has happened in the last 2 issues, and just nutshells it up real nice for you. It's like a previously on.
As you know, Bob,
it's real good exposition. Is that the word?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So who wants to tell us what Professor X actually does to get help?
Oh, he flags down.
No, he crawls to the highway first.
Yeah,
and
all
then
the
he
way to
flags
the
it
highway.
down.
I guess what's involved, because I was like, I feel like you didn't need telekinesis, I just keep saying
Telepathy.
you didn't need telepathy to, like, but I guess he says specifically they were going so fast that like he gave them the like sudden impulse to slow down, and then stop and help him in his car.
Yes, so he's zapped a couple
Malik.
drivers. Now, a couple of issues ago, one of the Sentinels at the TV studio has collapsed. And he's leaving his teenagers behind with like death machines. And he's like, I'm gonna go investigate what caused this other Sentinel to collapse, which is a smart move, but not when your teenagers are about to be murdered.
Sure.
By, death robots.
Those teenagers are always about to be murdered.
So as he's in a car rushing for help, we find the 4 original X-Men minus Beast, who is still captured somewhere else, put inside a giant glass fish bowl that repels all of their powers and also has like an internal gravity device keeping them like plastered to the ground.
It's heavy grav globe. That's what they call it. That's what the Sentinels call it.
And the Sentinels are carrying them around like the royalty.
Yeah.
I hope no one farts in there.
I
So
know
kidding.
that someone is, and I know that someone is Bobby.
we get them in this so there was a cage in the last issue that wasn't as strong. Cyclops could break through it, but in this one, this is like a super powerful force glass or of some kind. They're trapped in there for a little while. What efforts do we see the X-Men using to try and escape over these next couple pages?
Oh, they're actually
Anything
pretty
they
smart
can
about
do.
it.
Yeah.
I've got to give them credit. Oh, keep going.
Oh, I was gonna say, Jean seems like she had the worst idea. She's just like bouncing herself off the top of it.
Yeah, this is not Jean's finest moment. She lifts herself up and then like cracks down with her head at like the worst angle.
It looked like it crippled her. Like
she's giving us full like drowned poodle pigtails out the side. It is not her finest moment.
Yeah.
Iceman does pretty, like Iceman's idea is probably the most solid of the 3 of them, because he tries to make like he calls it, I think, a battering ram, but it's more like a like those shower rods that extend outward. Yeah.
Iceman loves a phallic ice construct. Giant, two-handed. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. None of it works. Although it does give him and like Cyclops a nice little moment where like Iceman's been feeling like the baby of the team, and Cyclops
super
like
precious.
Yeah, Cyclops like acknowledges like, hey, you did all you could. You did a really good job. That was a great idea. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
and he refers to him as a man, which is like a nice little moment for the 2 of them.
And then Bobby's like, you called me a man for the first time. And Scott's like, you're as much a man as any of us, Bobby. Never forget it. Like, oh, precious moments.
But literally one sentence before he calls him a man, he calls him a boy. Says, don't ever say that again, boy. You did all that any man could do. And he's like, oh, you called me a man, even though he literally just said boy in the same breath.
Hear what you want to hear. That's what I always say.
Bobby's like, oh, I'm blended in. So let's talk about Bolivar Trask for just a minute before we delve into the Sentinels. We reviewed this really, I'll review this really quickly, although we have talked about it in the last couple of weeks. Bolivar Trask is, we get more backstory on him later in the comics, but he is an anthropologist who has like vast government connections. He is kind of like Joe McCarthy. He's got this political movement. He sees mutants like McCarthy saw commies. Like, we're gonna target them, we're gonna form this campaign against them. And he's formed a pretty impressive media campaign, but he's a shitty robot designer. So his death machine's not so great. We also later learned that he has 2 mutant children, Larry Trask and Tanya, who's called Madam Sanctity, I believe. They've got tragic stories themselves. So not only is he anti-mutant, but he's like trying to find some cure for his own children somehow. What real life people do, when I describe Trask in this manner, like what real life politicians or people does this make you think of? Who comes to mind besides McCarthy?
I don't know, because it's a little hard to find like a analog as far as someone who is both politician and like inventor in this way. Like, I mean, scientists. We don't have many scientist politicians, obviously.
So spoiler, this issue closes with a quote about Trask. To read this out loud, this is the last thing said in the comic. It says, "Beware the fanatic. Too often his cure is deadlier by far than the evil he denounces." You see people who have these huge agendas against a particular population. So queer theory, for those of you that know this, there's back in the 70s, there's a woman named Anita Bryant, who's like a Christian singer, who launched this crusade against gays. And you see this type of thing, people who will seize political power over, let's fight against one particular group, be it Jews or women or African Americans or mutants, frankly. And I think we see a lot of it across history. I mean, Hitler being a prime example of how to form political power against a group. But it's a really jarring message that we receive here, because we see someone trying to seize absolute power, and then, spoilers, it does not end well for them. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on this, if any?
It does make me think of Reagan, but everything bad always makes me think of Reagan. You know, kind of unleashing these ideas that go further than probably ever imagined.
Sure.
Yes, but like, I mean, I guess it's that like for him, he really doesn't, he doesn't get there until moments before dying. But like most of the real world analogs I can think of never experienced any moment of regret. Like, they're just, if they're still alive, they're still the horrible people you remember. Just no one cares. We'll see Anita Bryant. Reagan was like that forever.
Well, and in recent years, we've tried to see campaigns formed against immigrants, like xenophobia. We see it against, women's right for determination in their own bodies. We certainly see it against like vaxxers or anti-vaxxers now. Like we see these political movements that form against people based around a message of hate. So this is a transcendent issue, I think, that really hits all points in history. It's a really interesting thing. I think Stanley's brilliant for bringing this into the comics back then, teaching a life lesson here. Because here's this guy who meant to do good, but it wasn't good. He was obsessed and kind of evil in his fanaticism. And he does use the word fanatic to describe him, which is even more powerful. Any other thoughts on that, or we should go back to being nerdy again?
Are we already at the place in the comics where the dialogue of like protecting a world that hates and fears them is, or is this still pre that?
This is kind of where it starts.
That's what I was thinking, because you really hadn't seen that much of that up until now. This is really the first kind of bits of like they're working to protect, I don't know, even somewhat like they try to go back to save this guy that put a really good effort into killing them.
Yeah, there's a couple of hints of that in the earlier issues, but it's almost from a mutant superiority place. Look how much better we are than humans. And then you see humans afraid of mutants the first time, but this is the first time we see like an agenda against them. The narrative really starts spreading. And Trask realizes, obviously, like, oh, X-Men are actually decent humans. Like, I need to reformat my thinking. So when you get
Well,
to
he
know
first
someone-
realizes that like the robots are bad. Like these robots are going to kill, don't care about humanity. They're just killing mutants. The best that they are offering is enslaving humanity.
And there's another draw in of you launch a political campaign behind a message, and then that campaign becomes a machine, which then develops its own sentience and its own feet to walk on, right? So we have lots of moments in history where somebody started something and then it went way past where they meant it to go. I don't know, interesting commentary. I think it's really smart storytelling. Any other deep thoughts, or we can jump back in on page 6? Okay, so we'll keep going then. So we have Master Mold having Bolivar Trask held captive still. I am looking at all these little sentinels who are all sentient, and they have distinguished themselves by placing little numbers on their chests. And I feel a little bad for the guy that put the 0 on his chest. What do you think happened to him?
He was just the very first one. So they had to start somewhere.
Maybe he used to be number 1 and then they hurt his feelings.
He got demoted.
You're the worst. Go put a 0.
Yeah, he said you can't demote me. I'm 1, and they said, "Bitch, you thought." Like.
And many years later in the 90s, we get a member of the Mutant Liberation Front who's a robot named Zero, who has an actual 0 on his chest and head. Do you guys remember Zero, the like all white guy with the zeros? He's like Strife's little teleporter. There's some reminiscence there.
Also, I gotta say, I said it before and I'll say it again. The color scheme that these early Sentinels are going with is really, like, red and blue look good usually. This is not it. The pink and purple really does them a lot of favors somehow.
With their orange faces.
It's a boot for me. Yeah, it's bad.
Really quickly, I was going to ask, as we're talking about Trask, can you guys think of other comic book characters, maybe even heroes, who launched big campaigns? So an example that comes to my mind is like Iron Man is a weapons designer, right? Can you think of others who perhaps have stepped into spaces with agendas that they later regretted?
Oh yeah, I mean, in Iron Man, there's the whole Civil War situation where at least the story was trying to convince us that everyone was wrong at the end, even though the story hadn't supported that.
Mr. Fantastic must have 100 stories where he has tried something and it has not gone the way he hoped. Giant Man designed Ultron. Like, I'll just do this little experiment, and then it becomes like a genocide monster robot. So we get this.
We'll see later on with Cyclops, where he sort of strikes off on his own as part of the mutant leader thing, and then the story kind of waffles around with whether that mattered or what his intentions were. But he at least starts off with a very strong, I don't know, idea in mind of what he wants, of a goal, and is ostracized because of it.
I think we could probably think of at least 30 Beast stories that are the same, where he tries something and it goes so awry. For example, time traveling the original X-Men. Any other Beast stories come to mind for you guys? Or his little X-Force CIA, where he's like taken over a whole country right now with mind control.
Once again, he still doesn't seem to feel that bad about Tierra Verde or anything.
Okay, so if we continue here, the Sentinels following Master Mold. What is Master Mold's goal here? What's he trying to do?
Create an army of Sentinels to take over the world. It's very Pinky in the Brain.
And he like uses a disintegrator beam to like prove to Bolivar how strong he is. Like, unless you work for me, I'm gonna destroy this whole city. Which, poor Bolivar, like he's put in a tough spot there.
He also, to prove it, destroys like a machine in his own lab. Like, that was you broke your own thing.
So
Noelle,
being a not so great robot creator, and they're not under his control, he does seem to have given them a lot of powers somehow.
Mhm. There's a thought bubble in issue 14 where Professor X is like, the reason the Sentinels are so evil is because Bolivar is not a great robot designer. Like he's an amateur designer. That's why this turned out this way, which is unfortunate. So we got
it is one thing.
Anthropologists should not design robots. So we cut back to Professor X, who's rushed back to the TV studio. We see Sentinel 5R again from issue 14, who just collapsed, and Professor X is wondering why. What does he discover when he gets back there?
Well, first I love him being carried in on the chair. So like he's a
Carried in on
king.
the
But then he figures out it's a giant crystal on a building.
There's a crystal products building across the street with a giant ass crystal hanging in like a bell tower that disrupts the signals that give the Sentinels sentience. Am I summing that up accurately?
I love this building
Unfortunately.
that just has a huge crystal. I want to see that in life. That sounds cool.
I feel like that's a driving hazard. Like you're gonna get light shining off the crystal and you're like, oh no, crash the car.
That's gonna melt somebody's car.
Ah.
Is what it's gonna. That's like an ant, like a magnifying glass and an ant is what that is.
I saw this thing and someone had bought like a crystal ball, and the person who sold it to them, they're like, make sure that you keep a cloth over it when you're not using it. And they're like, oh, is that because of like the spirits and like all this stuff? And she was like, no, because if the sun comes through the window and hits it, it's going to set your house on fire.
We also see Professor X using his telepathy to try to probe the mind of the Sentinel, which we've estimated in the last couple episodes. The Sentinels have sentience, so there's some sort of thought connector point. But even as he's doing it, he's like, this thing's basically like a television set. Like he's so condescending somehow as he tries to read this.
He's also, the way his powers work in this issue is sort of not the direction they'll ultimately go, just in terms of that he seems to be able to like just send his mind rays at things to get like a topography map of what's going on inside them, or like he does that later from the helicopter to the ground where he's like sending like his mind down there to see what's going on there, which is interesting. I don't think you see, at some point they kind of dispense with that power, but it is cool.
If you guys are reading the current X-Men comics, in X-Men #2, the brand new series, Jean Grey recently has a speech to Sync, I believe, where she compares telepathy to like having a flashlight beam, where you can kind of scan it over everything, or you can hone it really sharply in on one thing. So we're doing like a mind scan or probe as opposed to like a focused thought pattern, which is kind of an interesting concept for this power set. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So we see Professor X realizing that this crystal is going to be the thing that can defeat the Sentinels, which is convenient because if they had not found this crystal, their ass is grass, which is a good thing. But then we jump back to the X-Men, still waiting their turn to escape the glass prison. The Sentinels move to put Beast inside of the prison with them, which means they have to open it up, which it tells us it opens by repelling atomic particles from the globule's structure. What are your thoughts about the opening of this little cage here?
Well, I thought it was neat that they give the like personal note. If you want to make your own, here's how it works. They really didn't have to do that. Like if you're reading this as a kid, you have no question. They're gonna open the ball, sure. But it reminds me of like a precursor to the info pages that we're getting these days, giving like in-depth explanation, like pseudoscientific explanations of how these weird superpower things work.
I actually love that you brought that up. That's fantastic. Heather and Noelle, any thoughts here?
It's a weird opening. It like melts away. I don't know. I guess it's the only way to open a glass ball, but
Yeah, it melts away in like 3 different colors. So
I feel like we're zooming in on like a rose, like getting real close to like its petals somehow. It's a weird picture to me. But the X-Men are ready to go. We see them like thrusting themselves out of the opening. I don't know a more eloquent way to phrase it. But they're
So that's a thrust, you're right.
Cyclops gets out first while thinking of Jean, of course, because she's always on his mind. And then the X-Men need a bigger opening to thrust through. Sorry, everybody. And there's a new battle with the Sentinels again. Tell me some of your favorite moments in the fight scenes to follow.
I love Jean, again, using her powers in the most random ways against the Sentinels. Because she's like, oh, I'm going to stop him with my telekinesis. Oh, no, he's too heavy, but I'll slow him down. And now I'll just send his arms back to get him off balance.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of them can step in and make sure he doesn't get back up.
That is something I was joking about Warren being useless earlier, but it's something he does as well. They tend to, when they can't outmuscle something, they tend to outmaneuver, which is really cool because Jean's not yet at her like, as powerful as her telekinesis will be. And well, Warren is Warren, but he is fast and swift and smart.
Well, and then Warren is still in the midst of battle against these deadly Sentinels. He can still find the time to call Jean honey.
And be really condescending, yeah.
We also see some power synergy here, right? Which is a big focus in the current comics. Jean's knocking him backward, and then Iceman forms a slippery path beneath his feet to knock the Sentinel over. I don't know, good teamwork. But then the Sentinels fire stun rays. Oh no, and the X-Men are defeated once again with a giant thumb through the middle of the do you guys feel at this point the Sentinels are a formidable threat?
Yeah.
Yes, because it's working. They really seem like they really don't seem like they've got their stuff together anytime we're seeing them on the page, but they are very powerful, and they did manage to knock out all the X-Men.
Mm-hmm. And as
a unit, they remind me of the Banana Guards from Adventure Time, though.
They're arguably the X-Men's most consistent foes, besides Magneto. What makes them formidable here?
Because they don't have emotions, so there's nothing to try to play on, or even, and since they are robots, they also can't really be manipulated by Professor X, which is how so many of their foes have been defeated before. And so the fact that they aren't human makes it a lot more difficult because they only really know how to deal with humans. I mean, other than mutants as well, but they are human. And so, this is way before we all have pocket robots and things like that. And so robots and electronics aren't quite as common then. And so, you really don't know how to talk to robots.
Well, now I'm going to have a nightmare of an army of Tamagotchis seeking to take over humanity.
You mean a premonition?
The Sentinels, there's also an interesting message about superiority, right? They develop sentience, and it's, we are better than humans. We are programmed to destroy mutants. We know better. So there's like a sentient narcissism that automatically develops, which is interesting. Which is a theme we see in so many robot stories and other mediums, from Ultron to iRobot to Asimov to everything in between, right? Like the robots taking over the humans because they do it better, which Frankly, they might, because the world is not looking great right now.
Robots are always waking up and realizing that their dad is dumb.
Bradley and Noelle, do you guys have a favorite Sentinel story besides this one?
Oh.
I do not.
Okay, so in terms of like humor, the one where Cyclops convinces them to like that the most logical thing to do is to fly into the sun just by like basically wordplay is very funny. I also think just in terms of like in terms of just like a way of like reinventing the Sentinels and their threat, the where Cassandra Nova sent them to destroy Genosha was it's the time that I felt the most tragedy from the Sentinels, because it's the least like a oh, X-Men are just fighting big robots. They just go and kill a bunch, like a city full of just people, and it's very sad.
So this is for Heather primarily, but perhaps Noelle as well. There's a story in the 2000s where we learned Professor X killed his twin sister in utero, and then she comes back as a woman named Cassandra Nova, who weaponizes Sentinels to kill 16 million mutants across the planet. It's a really intense story. There's like a mutant.
By way of it, it brings the Trasks back again too. It's like his nephew or something that gives her access to the Master Mold, and she sort of repurposes them into a lot. Also, by then, in that story, the Sentinels themselves are not as humanoid as we're used to seeing here or in most Sentinels.
Yeah, they call them wild Sentinels there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they look like the little horrifying toys of Sid's in Toy Story, like the baby head with the spider arms. It's a lot of those.
They're creepy. Grant Morrison does it. Grant Morrison, I believe, is the writer.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Very, very scary.
So these Sentinels are almost ready to destroy the X-Men, but Professor X has mobilized 3 helicopters. How many goddamn helicopters does this man have? Maybe these are not his, but there are so many helicopters.
They're not
These are
his.
the police
It's all
force
the police-
helicopters.
Yeah.
Okay,
How many helicopters does the police force have, though?
Yeah.
Not as many as Professor X.
Yeah.
But they are carrying this giant ass crystal over the facility, and the Sentinels just kind of start dropping dead. It's a little sad, actually. Somehow they like just fall over because a crystal's near them. Sad thing.
Yeah, it is. It is a little anticlimactic. Basically, the X-Men get knocked out, and then while they're asleep, the Sentinels get knocked out.
And Professor X is like literally saving the day here.
Yeah.
Well, he and Bolivar Trask. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, he's zapping them all. Although if Master Mold had succeeded in his creation of making millions of Sentinels, would the crystal have just knocked them over anyway? I guess we'll never know.
There would have been like an area of safety around the crystal.
Yeah.
Does the crystal work on Master Mold? I want to say Master Mold is only taken out by the explosion. I don't think for whatever reason that the crystal works on him.
I do not believe we ever see this crystal again. It might be mentioned in passing at some point. I'd have to do deeper research, but I'm pretty positive we don't see it again in conjunction with the Sentinels story. So we'll never have the answer to that question, unfortunately. So we go back to the X-Men, who are now waking up. They find the Sentinels collapsed all around them, and they launch into attack. We get a close-up of Beast's giant toes. So for you out there, this is the issue for you. What are some of your favorite moments in the following fight scene? And we'll come back to Bolivar Trask in just a second.
I do
honestly,
No, go ahead.
Oh no, you go.
I was just gonna say I do love whenever the lights all go out and they're all like, "Oh, I can't see," and like Angel crashes into things because he's flying in the dark, and just general confusion is a little bit funny.
That's also a very good panel of silhouettes. They all just look really cool. Like a little club. On the same page as the silhouette panel and the Beast foot fetish panel, is a big panel of just like some nice like Kirby type machinery that looks really cool. You get a real sense of scale when you see it. Like you see Bolivar down there and he's tiny, and you see like that huge machine that makes the Sentinels above him and the Master Mold in the foreground.
Yeah,
it's just fun to look at.
That's an amazing panel. I agree. In the action shot on page 14, as the team's running into action, did you guys all notice how Jean Grey is running? It's the weirdest thing.
She's hopping.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like she's not running. There's the
She's
telekinesis bolts behind her. Yeah,
It's like she's riding a telekinetic snake. She's like going,
yeah.
wah, wah, through. I don't. It's the weirdest
Girl, you didn't have to
way.
do all that.
Well, if you're going to teleport yourself, you could go in, just a straight line.
It's a very strange way. I think she's maybe just experimenting somehow, or she keeps falling down to the ground after trying to like lift herself up. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, poor thing. She needs some practice. Okay, so we move back to Master Mold, who has this giant ice tray.
Yeah.
And here's the scientific explanation for how Sentinels are created by Bolivar Trask's design. He has a giant robot that sits in a chair that is powered by an ionic energy power source. And then syntho particles are transferred from Master Mold's mind into a giant ice tray, which then pops out Sentinels. And the more it works, the faster the Sentinels will be birthed.
Yes.
I would love an ice tray. I would love an ice tray that I could put what looks like Mountain Dew here in there and have little ice Sentinels. That's the cutest thing I can imagine. What 3D printer do I have to contact?
You gotta love yourself some Kirby science. What are your thoughts on the Sentinel creation process? This is the room where it happens. This is how the sausage is made.
It seems really inefficient. You can only make 8 at a time.
Although it does say like it'll make 8, and then I guess it's implied that the process speeds up the more are made for some reason, but it's unclear why, but I'm not going to ask questions because I'm looking at a Sentinel ice tray.
Now, if you didn't see this, how would you presume Sentinels are created?
Well, what's more alarming is what are they made out of? Are they made out of metal? How is it? Where does it?
They're made out of,
You need like physical resources. There don't seem to be any.
They're made out of syntho particles from Master Mold's cranial cavity. I don't know. When I would picture like an assembly line.
Yeah, like a factory, like little, levers and things, just like little drills.
That was what I was thinking too. Yeah.
I'm pretty confident we get a future Master Mold who like opens its mouth and Sentinels come out from inside of it. Does that ring a bell with anybody?
Yeah, no, and that's somehow even grosser, which I wouldn't have thought possible with this.
At least they did not make Master Mold anatomically correct. At least they come out of Master Mold's mouth, because that would be worse.
Terrifying.
when a Master Mold and a Lady Sentinel love each other very much.
So Bolivar Trask is tasked with creating these Sentinels, and just as they're about to be birthed, he's having all kinds of deep thoughts. Let me read just a couple of his thought bubbles out loud. Once the process is started, there'll be no stopping it. If enough energy is built up, the machine could run forever. They'll eventually outnumber the human race. They'll enslave all of mankind. They'll be the masters of the earth. And all because of me. In my ignorance, my fear, I created an evil far greater than the menace it was built to destroy. Give me some of your thoughts on Bolivar here.
Props for realizing he's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of start to feel bad for him because, he does figure it out. Yeah, he started out pretty shitty, but he's learning, which not everyone does.
Well, tons of bad people die never realizing that they were responsible for people's deaths.
Yes.
So, like I said, as far as I know, Ronald Reagan never felt that a day in his life. So,
Unless his own like personal fortune was disrupted somehow, then but we get this like really sad panel with like Trask ripping off his mask, like ready to sacrifice himself, and then he grabs I don't know what that is, dildo.
yeah,
And
his personal one.
smashes
That thing's
the
as
ionic
long as
power
his
source.
spine.
What was that, Bradley?
I said his personal one, and then I said that thing's as long as his spine.
And he smashes the ionic power source, and like a series of explosions destroy the entire base, collapsing in on Master Mold, collapsing in on Trask, and killing him, which is frankly quite dramatic. In the previous X-Men issues, we've seen villains defeated by having their minds wiped. I don't. They've been taken to space and turned to stone. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think we have a single issue where like the villain has been arrested and sent to jail. I guess Vanisher went to jail after his mind was erased. I think he went
Stanley
to
doesn't believe in the prison system.
yeah, that's kind of strange. They're fighting all these bad guys who just kind of walk off at the end. Professor X just let Lucifer go at the end of their battle.
I mean, most of the people that they're fighting are mutants who wouldn't have stayed in prison. So
so as the building is exploding, the X-Men have to get out. Who wants to talk about Beast and Bobby here? Because it's
well, also, wait, before we move on, one more thing. I guess Boulevard doesn't do anything illegal, does he? Do they do any property damage outside of this building?
I don't think so. I mean, it destroys
like, what would happen? That didn't occur to me when I was reading it until I thought, what would they charge him with if he were going to jail? And I like blowing it like
the X-Men aren't about to testify against him.
Yeah,
because they'd have to publicly reveal themselves.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's also probably why nobody gets arrested.
Yeah.
What was that, Heather?
I said, which is also another reason why nobody gets arrested. Because he's going to testify.
Yeah.
That's interesting. He has the right lawyers and he gets away scot-free. So somebody talk about Beast and Bobby here. I find it so awkward.
Just surely there had to be a better way than like, so like Beast says something like, oh, he's too slippery. Like it gets too hot and Iceman's about to pass out. He's too slippery to hold in my hands. Beast, no. And so he loads him into his legs and I guess like walks on his hands out. That like, I have to believe there was a better way. You have a friend who's a telekinetic. Why didn't you just say, Gene? No, Beast wanted to do this. This was
literally like Fireman of Tim.
What?
And if you can hold him in your legs, you can hold him in your arms.
Yeah, like grab him. He lays Bobby like across his ass and then like carries him on his booty out the door. It's so strange. It's such a weird panel.
It is.
There were just so many other options.
So many. And like, was it even necessary? Was anyone even going to be worried about it? If they're like, wait, could he hold Iceman? Like, they have to doubt. Like, yes, he could have.
But thank goodness a minute later, Bobby has thawed out a little. So now Beast can hold him properly. I think he just wanted to put Iceman on his ass. That's my theory. He's a little.
Maybe he was sore. We don't know.
Yeah.
He's like, my hemorrhoids are killing me. I need an Iceman.
I have to do this, guys. I have to.
I had no choice. It was my only way to save his life. And then who wants to talk about Gene and Scott on the next page? We're on page 18. Aw.
We get some quality romance comic stuff going. Yeah, some pining in the midst of like this giant fire. You're like, get a grip. But some good teenage stuff.
And she's like, even with his own life at stake, he worries about me. Is it any wonder I feel about him as I do?
Jean lifts Scott out of the way, and then he's like, "Don't strain yourself while you save me." It's actually kind of sweet. It's a cute little moment. Again, she really needs a new headpiece though. That like two strands of hair out the back is not doing it for me. No,
It's a pigtail moment. I do wonder sometimes. I've tried to draw this costume before, and I was like, what's going on with how her hair comes out the back of there? And the answer is that it's not nice. It doesn't look good.
I mean, in fairness, it keeps her hair out of her face.
That is true. That is true.
So you're wearing a head sock that covers like Batman cowl, right? And it comes out the back, and you've cut 2 holes here. So like Noelle, you have the longest hair. You'd have to like bunch all of your hair on one side and pull it through, and then all of your hair on the other side and pull it through, and then like floof it out. Like,
and all I can think is all the hair that's going to be stuck in there. Like you're never getting all of your hair out of that. Like, and what is it made out of? It looks kind of rubbery. And so that's not good for hair. You're just going to rip it out too.
It looks like latex, but it's probably unstable molecules because that's what all of the Marvel costumes are made out of.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's real strange. And then Jean saves the day. They are locked inside.
Yeah.
She uses her powers in a new way this time. She projects her telekinesis through a wall, and she triggers like a lock mechanism that she can't see, which is the first time she even notes it. This is the first time she's done this. So we get a rare Jean saves the day moment.
Yeah, we do.
She also sorry.
Go ahead.
She also manages to Angel wouldn't be able to flap his wings without hitting, like there's fire really close on either side. And so she tells him like, extend your wings and I will just
Slide you through.
Yeah, which is really cool. It kind of saves everybody.
Yeah.
And as she's doing that, Iceman is still on Beast's booty. Just Noelle, what were you going to say about Jean?
Oh, I was just going to say, it seems Jean's power right there where she uses it seems very similar to Professor X using his power to kind of like see things or figure out how things look or what's inside, which is she doesn't have or doesn't know about her telepathy right now, right?
Right.
So she has kind of a weird combination of powers going on there.
Although at this point in her history, she's already been to the future where she was killed twice and one time used her powers to reassemble her body out of spare organic matter. Then she forgot that she did that. So somewhere there's some subconscious memory. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
Also, I do think I think this power makes more sense for telekinesis than it does for telepathy. I think the idea of sending your brain out and like feeling your way through what open space exists there makes a lot of sense for her powers.
As they are escaping, we see Angel insulting Beast by calling his feet tugboat tootsies, which sounds like a 1920s like all girls band. Like,
oh my God.
We're gonna go down to the dance hall and hear the tugboat tootsies perform tonight.
It's tootsies.
Tootsies? I can say tootsies.
It's tootsies.
A tootsie roll. Tootsie. Now I don't know how I say it.
That really does. It really does feel like they're flirting a little bit, though. It seems like he's just negging him, and he's like, not you, Gabby. That also, what is the nickname Gabby?
Like talking a lot.
Okay. Not you, Gabby. They'd never find boots big enough for those tugboat tootsies of yours.
Well, you say tootsies too. Noelle, how do you say it?
I think tootsies.
Tootsie.
Yeah, that is how I say tootsie roll. So.
Okay, I think I probably say tootsie too, but now I'm questioning myself. It's not a word I think about a lot, nor is it a big part of my vocabulary.
Never, like growing up, my siblings and I, whenever we would like make a toast or whatever, because kids are weird. We would our toast was always a toast to our tootsies. May they be warm forever.
Okay.
Oh.
My partner is like really careful with his diction. It's like important to him. He like emphasizes his sounds. But he says the word rural. He pronounces it rural, like it's a ruler.
The rural juror.
And I say rural.
I was just thinking.
And I've teased him about it for years, but we recently had a friend over who's like, oh, I love living in a place that's this rural. And Mike was like, oh, did you hear that? Rural.
I'm not alone.
Okay, so the X-Men get out narrowly, the base explodes, and then we get this very sad ending with Bolivar kind of cradled on the chest of Master Mold underneath the wreckage, where we get this kind of warning about beware, your own hubris, basically. What did you guys think of this ending?
Well, it comes. Oh, go on.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I like the villain redemption story, and I think there was no other way to kind of redeem him. He had to sacrifice himself to do it. So I liked that part of it.
It's a very sort of poetic ending too, where he dies sort of in the arms of his creation that killed him. Also, something that I missed earlier is that Professor X. So he went out there with the policemen and did his whole thing where he saved the day, and they're still holding this giant crystal up with their helicopters. And while they're up there, he erases their brains so they don't remember that. So as far as they know, they're just as far as they know, they're just kind of up here holding a giant crystal.
Well, I don't
while
think
they're on the clock.
I don't think that he made them forget about the Sentinels. He made it so they didn't see the X-Men coming out.
Okay. I thought he just erased their memory of the whole day, and I was just like, wild move, dude.
Yeah, from my understanding, I could be wrong. I think he's
probably
just making it so they don't see the X-Men.
He's altered their memories to protect his students, which is more noble than just wiping their day. Because if you think about that in real life, you would lose your job and then go home to your family. I don't know what happened. I don't know. So deep nerd dive for just a minute. If you guys have read the future comics, Master Mold and the Sentinels will return in X-Men 57, which we will get to eventually. In the far future, we see a deadlier version of a Sentinel. It's a pink, weird-looking fucker named Nimrod, who comes back in time and hunts the X-Men. And it's a really scary X-villain, actually. There's a story farther in the future where Master Mold and Nimrod pass through this magical doorway called the Siege Perilous, which then melds them together as a different futuristic robot called Bastion, who's another major foe of the X-Men. Bastion will later be involved in a series of adventures against the X-Men, and he does a lot of crazy things. But one of them, he's involved in a story where he uses an alien techno-organic virus to revive a number of the X-Men's old dead human foes, among them Bolivar Trask. So we see Bolivar Trask come back in the future, reanimated under the control of Bastion, who is Master Mold mixed with the future Sentinel Nimrod, which is again he just was not thinking ahead when he did this. He had no idea what the consequences of his actions are. So that's a really good storyline if you haven't read that original run in X-Force Volume 4 or 5. Craig Kyle and Chris Yost. It's a great story if you guys have read it. So we always ask our guests, what was your favorite moment in this issue if you had to choose one, and who was your star player today?
My star player was either, again, Bolivar Trask or Jean. Because, like Noelle was saying, I did like the redemption arc for Bolivar Trask, and that he did make the sacrifice in order to right his wrongs and save everyone, basically. Because if he hadn't done that, then I don't think that they would have ended up winning. But also Jean, because she really got her moment in the sun with the different ways that she was able to use her powers and save everyone's ass. My favorite moment, I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite, but just for pure ridiculousness when Charles is crawling to the fucking highway, because like that was not the best way to do. There were better ways to
Yeah.
Lack of planning, yeah.
Bradley, how about you?
I'd say, okay, so I probably have two favorite moments. And the first one, just because it's a cute team moment, is like when they're all trapped in the bubble, they each tried their best to get out using their own individual powers, and then the way that they end up getting out is by, you know, working together as a team. That's just like a cute team book moment. Like that's a fun, we're better together than any of us are individually. But also just the conclusion of this, with the moment where you see, you know, his Bolivar realizes the error of his ways, and then it talks about, you know, the danger of fanaticism, and it's just a nice moment. Nice might not be the right, but it's a touching moment. My star player is, I'm gonna say Jean, just because I like Jean really getting to a place where she's really a force to be reckoned with. She's the one who's consistently saving the day. And I would give it to Xavier because he's the one who does factually take out the Sentinels, but I refuse to give Xavier credit for something.
It's valid.
Noelle?
I had literally the same thought about Professor Xavier, where I was like, oh, he did save him, but no, I can't say it with him. So my star player, I have to go with Bolivar Trask. I love that last image where he's laying across the Sentinel and everything. I like complicated characters, and so someone who goes from being a villain, and you can see how conflicted he is the whole time over what he's done, and even when he's, you know, working for the Sentinels, it's for trying to save people. So I have to pick him. My favorite moment, though, after that last picture of Trask, is the helicopters flying in with the crystal. It's so insane, and I love it.
My favorite moment is the same, that last or second to last panel with Trask dead under the rubble on Master Mold. I think it's brilliant storytelling. And, you know, star player, I'll get into the characters, but Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, in all of their titles back then, started out with just nonsense, silly 60s madcap crazy. But they stuck with it a while, and as they did, they became incredible storytellers. This 3-issue arc of the X-Men for a 60s book is so good and so resonant 50 years later. I'm so impressed by it. You watch this like build with Trask, the media campaign, captured by the Sentinels, and then like saves the day by sacrificing himself. It's a beautifully told story. I'm really impressed. And I feel like all of the X-Men get some character moments along the way. The story's contained. You see them in this Sentinel base, basically the entire 3 issues almost. It's not scattered all over the place. It's a really, really solid block of storytelling. The Juggernaut epic in a similar way, but this one's better. And we get more and more coming up, although we only have 3 more issues written by Stan Lee, and then a new writer takes over. So we've got a new era of X-Men coming up shortly. My star player in this, not surprisingly, is Bolivar Trask as well. I think it's a really brilliant, short-lived character that you care a lot about by the end. As we look at next issue, we have a promise that there's going to be an unexpected menace. In X-Men number 17, I will not spoil, even though it's 50 years old. We get a villain targeting the X-Men and kind of taking them out one at a time, and he's in the shadows the entire issue until the very end. It's kind of a suspenseful read. So Heather, for you especially, since you'll be with me next time, don't skip ahead. It's worth the reveal. But what are your thoughts as you look at the cover of X-Men 17? Any preliminary thoughts? So the words on the side say, "You must not reveal the incredible ending to any living soul. Remember, we'll be watching you, and none shall survive." And we get the X-Men.
The
like
red is really cool.
In dark red. It's kind of cool, right?
Yeah, it's just the red, black, and white are just a monochrome thing. It doesn't get old. It looks as good now as it did then. It's cool.
Yeah.
Any other
Like
thoughts?
the door opening in the shadow. It's very menacing.
Yeah, yeah. We have three modern series, Wolverine, Deadpool, and Carnage, that are all called Black, White, and Blood. If you guys have seen those titles out, and they're all just printed in black, white, and red. Like that's the only colors in the books. It's a really interesting artistic
It's
style.
solid. Yeah, it looks cool.
So as we sign out here, Heather, if you'll start, and then Noelle, and then Bradley, tell us where we can find you on social media, and if you have any current stuff coming up with your own works, we'd love to hear about it.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Heather_Beth_. And I said it in the last episode, I'm set on private on Twitter, but send me a request and I'll probably let you follow me. I'm pretty liberal with that.
And I am on Instagram and Twitter at X-Men Unraveled. And my podcast is pretty much wherever you listen, following the comics in chronological order. Right now, I'm going through the stories of Namor the Submariner. So those have been pretty fun to work on.
Yeah, it's a really fun listen too. I really like your stuff.
Thank you.
And Bradley.
All right. My name is Bradley. I am on Twitter at Knife System, KNIFESYSTEM. I'm making art regularly. I make comics, all that stuff. You'll kind of see me post about it on there. But yeah, and I'm on Instagram at Bradley A. Clayton. So find me on either of those and chat with me about whatever.
And incredible art, beautiful, beautiful work. I really love it.
Thank you.
You can find Graymalkin Lane on Instagram and Twitter. Just search for Graymalkin Lane, the podcast. We're posting things regularly based on the episode that is running during the week. Well, my tugboat tootsies, it's been wonderful to connect with each of you today. Thank you for being here and supporting the podcast. And I look forward to connecting again soon. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.